Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Alexis, for anybody who doesn't know. Welcome if you're new, or welcome back if you have been here before. I am the author of A Journey into Truth, Unveiling Life's Secrets for Truth Seekers. And this book talks all about the last 6 years of my life, the awarenesses I've come to because of my experiences, talks about the spiritual journey I've been on, the many teachers I have learned from, and things like going to the jungle, doing ayahuasca, meeting monks, Buddhists, and what else? Doing family constellations, trainings, Reiki, all kinds of things. And it also talks about some of the life lessons and philosophies I have learned along the way. So if you're interested in learning more about that book, you can visit my website, www.vibrate2create.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Vibrate2Create. Here on Vibrate to Create, I talk about all things spiritual and metaphysical. I also make reaction videos to things like spiritual teachers and spiritual teachings. And sometimes I also make entrepreneurial videos letting you guys know how to self-publish your own books. So if you're interested in that kind of content, then click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be notified of when I post new videos so you never miss a video. Today, I'm going to be doing a reaction video. Let's see. I had this idea last night that I wanted to do a video about good versus evil, and I haven't found a video yet, but I'm gonna look it up. But with that in mind, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a class that I have coming up. So I'm part of this training program where I'm learning how to be a public speaker, and we get to practice up on stage. So we get to be up in front of an audience who are our classmates. And the way that we learned is through experiential training. So we learn through games, and we have to dress up in costume and like play. And in this next like 3-day training, we are going to be learning about how to tell captivating stories and how to like use emotion and be big and be passionate and have like the ability to captivate an audience. So I'm so excited for that. But the two archetypes that we're going to be playing with in this specific 3-day training is a mime and a villain or a superhero. So I got to choose between a hero or a villain, and I decided I wanted to do a villain, but I wanted to do not a traditional villain, but more like a villain that has good aspects to them, and also a villain who became a villain because of tragedy that happened in her life. And I don't want to tell you guys too much of the story because I'm actually thinking of writing her story and creating it into a book or maybe a series. I think that would be so fun to like try my hand at fiction, because I wrote a nonfiction book, which you guys have heard about because I talk about it on every single one of my videos. But I really want to do a fiction book now. So I'm not going to tell you the details about her. You're going to have to wait until the book comes out. But I'm thinking of writing that book, so we'll see. And I think during this training, it's going to be so cool to play with her during the training, because I'm going to get to like dive into actually becoming her and playing the part, so that I can kind of feel out what is her personality, what's her temperament, how does she interact with other people. But yeah, I think it's going to be so much fun. I'm really excited. I'm probably going to vlog a little bit of it because we're supposed to be filming every single time that we get up on stage. And I'm probably not going to show you the whole thing because it'll give away the story and give away who she is. But maybe just little clips. So we'll see. That vlog may be coming soon. I'm very excited about that. I've been getting comments about people really liking my videos, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I see every single one of your comments, and I'm just very appreciative that people are enjoying the material that I put out there, because that's what it's for. It's for you guys and to leave my legacy behind. And thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm so excited. The people that have been commenting, they're from India, and to me that's just like mind-blowing to think my face, my stories, my life is traveling to different countries. I also saw that my book was purchased in Japan and in Britain. Like, what? That's pretty cool that I get to interact with or become a part of somebody else's life. So I'm so excited. Thank you guys so much. Ah, so cool. So cool. Even if it's just one or two of you guys, like, man, how cool. Alright, so today I'm going to be doing a reaction video, and like I said, I want to do good versus evil because I'm going to be diving into this when I do my superhero, supervillain class. So it's going to be interesting. And the reason I want to do a villain is because I think when you think about hero and villain, you think hero is the one who conquers the bad people. He puts them and locks them away, or he kills them, or he does good by hurting people who are villains, or by locking up the people who are villains. And so I wanted to play with the concept of a villain who has good parts, and she became the villain because of the hero. So because of something the hero did. And it'll just kind of play with these concepts of good versus evil versus what is the right thing to do, and is it right for the hero to play the part of, what are the consequences of the hero's actions, and what are the consequences of how the villain responds. So I think that's going to be fun to play with that concept. It's still in its very beginning stages, but I'm excited for that to develop. So let's do a reaction video about good versus evil, something philosophical, something that kind of makes us think. And if I think of any stories as I'm watching, we will dive into that. Okay, so this is 15, almost 16 minutes long, and it is called True Evil Doesn't Exist, and it's a Socrates philosophy, and Socrates is in my book. And it was uploaded 3 years ago.
Socrates is probably the most well-known philosopher worldwide, which is in part due to the numerous pop culture references about him over the years.
Atomically, Socrates' philosophies and hypotheses can't define how I be dropping these mockeries.
And his famous quote stating that the only true wisdom is in knowing that you know nothing. Despite the name Socrates being so recognizable, most people actually don't know anything at all about his philosophies. So hopefully by making this animated video, I can help change this unfortunate reality. As you've noticed by the title, Socrates didn't quite believe in the notion of true evil, or the modern way that we use the word per se. Rather, he believed that the phenomenon was really just a particularly pernicious form of ignorance. In addition to discussing the topic of evil and morality, I will also delve into some information about Socrates' life, which I'm sure you'll find very interesting. Socrates believed that philosophy should achieve practical results for the greater well-being of society, and he attempted to establish an ethical system based on human reason rather than theological doctrine. He also pointed out that human choice was motivated by the desire for happiness, and that ultimate wisdom comes from knowing oneself. The more a person knows about themselves, the greater his or her ability to reason and make choices that will bring about true happiness in one's life. It's because of this belief that Socrates treated his city as if it was a classroom and went about asking questions of the elite and common man alike, seeking to arrive at political and ethical truths. The modern use of the term evil is heavily influenced by the Judeo-Christian tradition, which makes up much of the foundation of Western culture. In Christian thought, evil is a term with cosmological contexts that are used to explain the existence of human wrongdoing. This style of explaining human evil in the tradition of Abrahamic religions is connected to concepts of sin, rebellion against God, and the fall of humanity from divine paradise. In the Socratic perspective, evil is a term simply used as a synonym to describe wrongdoings of all kind. Harmfulness is the only evaluative criterion used for assessing the evil. If a behavior is not harmful at all, then there is no basis of defining the evil of that behavior. Also, the recognition of human evil is usually misunderstood in the minds of most people. Human evil is usually measured in terms of the intensity of the destructive result without regard to understanding its nature. The nature of evil is something that must be discussed if we are able to figure out why it exists in the hearts of mankind. A particular behavior might be harmful in some circumstances, but not others. Furthermore, a particular harmful result might indicate great evil in one person, but might just be a one-time fluke. However, Socrates believed that ignorance and fear are always at the origin of wrongdoing. That brings up the question, if something that we consider to be evil is really just fear and ignorance, then can we rightfully think of it as true evil? What do you think?
So in my training, in my public speaker training, we have these really, he puts us in sometimes these really rough scenarios. So one of them was where we had to dress up or they dressed up as like generals or, you know, government, and the rest of the people in the room, they were allowed to either take money from other groups, because we were divided into little groups, and so we were allowed to like take property. I think it was property we were allowed to take from other people, or we were allowed to buy, or we were allowed to sell stuff. And at like towards the end of the game, what ended up happening is people were ending up taking from everyone else, and then not actually thinking of what it's like to be on that side, but everybody was self-serving and taking care of themselves and trying to win the game. And we weren't even thinking about what it's like to be on the other side, where we're taking from somebody, and what it's like to feel taken from, and what it's like to, like, for someone to take you out basically of the game because of their own like self-serving choices. And at the end of the game, the teacher talked to us about that's what goes on in the world, and you don't think about what it's like to be on the side that's being taken from. And people were like so upset and crying, but it was good because we were thinking about what does it mean to be good and bad. What does it mean to be on the other side of the fence, and to think about, oh my gosh, I wouldn't want to be taken from. And you think at the end of it, you're like, oh, I thought it was a good person, but I'm really not a good person because I took from other people when I said that I would never do something like that. But when you're put under pressure, what comes out? And when you're put in a situation where you feel like, oh, I need to take care of my family, and I need to get more money because this was the kind of situation I was put into when I was born into this world. What would you do? And you don't know what you would do unless you were in that situation with that family that you needed to take care of, you know? So these are such impactful games that we play. As you can see, let me get a tissue. But just thinking, like, it's so easy to say I'm a good person, I wouldn't do that, and then you get put in a situation and you're like, oh, this is much harder than I thought it would be. But there's my tears for the day.
Let's continue the conversation by discussing morality, self-interest, and its relation to wrongdoings. The term morality refers to our adherence to rules that govern human behavior on the basis of right or wrong. Whatever your concept of morality, it must address our capacity to decide between right and wrong and then act accordingly. Socrates believed that nobody chooses to do wrong because doing wrong always harms the wrongdoer, and nobody seeks to harm themselves due to our natural instinct for self-interest. Since nobody consciously wants to harm their own well-being, then it can be reasoned that all wrongdoing must be derived from ignorance. It is true that people willingly do wrong/harmful acts consciously, but it's not true that people willingly do things that they perceive to be harmful to themselves, and that's an important distinction. It's like a person who cuts themselves. They are objectively harming themselves, but they do it regardless due to the psychological relief that they report to receive as a result of doing such an act. In their own intuitive calculus of personal benefit, they have decided that the damage inflicted by the act of cutting themselves is better than a state of unrelieved stress. Socrates believed that people who seek what they understand to benefit them are not trying to do wrong. They do not act for the sake of the wrong, but for the sake of obtaining the perceived good which they are trying to help themselves. Regardless of how ridiculous the methods may seem to other people, it is in our nature to see what we perceive to benefit us as being good and right, and it's also in our nature to see which harms us as being bad and wrong. This is what we would call natural morality. Even when one makes the ultimate sacrifice of choosing to give up their own life, self-interest is still expressed in the act when the one who chooses has a purpose in mind. Our natural obsession with benefiting ourselves brings up the relationship between self-interest and morality. Deciding that a particular behavior is morally wrong in a particular circumstance is a value that can only be imposed by a self-interested being. A non-self-interested being is incapable of conceiving of right and wrong in any moral sense. There is no such thing as morally right or wrong until there first exists self-aware self-interest. What we consider to be right is only deemed right because of the context that it appeals to the self-interest of ourselves or of others. The same can be said in the case of what we consider to be wrong or bad. Now, there does exist people that can commit horrible actions with no sensible benefit. But in such circumstances, either the benefit of the action is only perceivable to such person's own distorted inner sense of well-being, or such persons are aware of acting out of uncontrollable compulsion. In the latter case, they are rendered unable to make real choices and are thus removed from the realm of morality altogether. To the extent that we are unable to choose, we are unable to be moral. Furthermore, the instinct for self-interest may assert itself in the minds that are ignorant, confused, twisted, broken, and utterly unable to know what is truly good, and this is a separate issue that does not negate the fundamental truths of Socrates' insight that people never willingly harm themselves. Actions based on ignorance still has the motive of benefiting the actor, but lacks the knowledge to make good of that motive. Socrates is pretty much saying that those who are philosophically ignorant are more likely to make bad moral decisions due to their lack of ability to override their natural feelings regarding certain situations. To continue this conversation even further, we must address the presupposition that underlies the whole argument, which is that committing acts of evil does harm to the character. In order to define harm to character, we have to identify a decrease in functioning of the human character. According to Socrates, we can identify a decrease in functionality when lapses of character cause us to be less useful or skillful, either in cooperative group efforts or in our own private living. The functioning of our working and living relationships with other human beings is a fundamental issue in morality because in the absence of any obligation to other humans, animals, environments, etc., morality becomes undefinable except in terms of self-care. This is why isolationism is so commonly the precursor to acts of evil. To expound on this point, the strength and well-being of a society is largely determined by the capacity of its individual members to work cooperatively together towards common goals such as safety and well-being. The most significant disruption of this strength is related to the integrity of the human character with regard to how we relate to and work with one another. Part of Socrates' goal was to learn what it meant to live as a just and virtuous citizen. This was of the utmost importance to Socrates because he knew that the good character of the individuals contributed directly to the survival and well-being of his whole society. When the learning and thinking habits of people begin to lack, that is, when the masses do not live examined life, democracy becomes a fast road to tyranny. When the justice and skillful virtue of the human character of individual citizens is harmed, society is also harmed. The relationship between character and functionality is easy to see. When a group's goals depend on accurate information, lying causes a decrease in needed functionality and reduces the group's chances of achieving their goals.
Ye must be saved! But I can't stop it. If I stop it, then I'm in trouble with the Lord.
Although some people say these children have a brilliant career ahead of them in preaching, teachers here say if the students continue their disruptive behavior, what's in their immediate future is more trouble.
To the hands of the living God! Ye serpents!
Their brother Duffey preaches outside the school grounds since he's under suspension for this kind of behavior. The principal told them to stop preaching and come in the building.
You must come into the building. By staying out here, you're in violation of those school rules.
Fools! Make a mock and see it!
Robin Strode told the principal there's nothing in the school handbook that says her children must be in the building before 8 a.m.
Now you get that handbook and you show me. Now, see, you can't take it.
If they were standing out here in silent protest, they would be in violation of school rules.
Principal Gorst suspended Pepper and Matthew for 10 days.
It was straight out of hell.
What do you think, Matthew?
I think he's a Pharisee.
I was speaking to this guy the other day. He was such a sweet guy, and he had it in his mind that it was so important for him to stand up for his freedom. And he was an artist, and he had started making shirts that say freedom something on them. And so he gave me one of the shirts, and he was like talking a little bit about it and what he was doing and how they were kind of fighting for freedom by this art piece and by spreading the word of, freedom of choice. And I thought that was beautiful, that he felt like he was having such a noble cause. And I told him, like, oh yeah, I'm open to listening, because he said that he's come across people who really didn't agree with him whatsoever, and they were like seeing him as the villain. And like, I had a lot of compassion for that, because it's like, I understand, because I don't have it either. And I have nothing against people who decide to get it either. And I had someone tell me, like, that they thought I didn't get it because I'm spiritual. And I was like, no, that's not it at all. Like, it has nothing to do with that. It's more just like, I'm very much a person who's like, I don't like to be told what to do. I think my thing is just like thinking about freedom of choice, and like, what does it mean to allow somebody to make the choice for you? And should it be okay if you feel like you don't want to do it? Should it be somebody else's choice to say, well, you should do it because of this and this and this? And then you also can come across the idea of like, okay, I understand why you feel that way, why you feel like it's the right thing to do. And also, I'm standing up for why I think this is the right thing to do, and I will stand in my own choice to do this way. Does that make sense? This is such a charged topic. I can feel it already. But it's important. This is a very important conversation to talk about in the history of mankind, because this is such a big place of change in our lives, in our futures, in our children's futures, in the world, and how the rest of time will go on. So this is important to talk about, and even if people really hate the conversation, I think it's important. Because I have nothing against any of, those ideas. I don't think science is bad. I don't believe science is a lie. I think it's true. And also, I think freedom of choice is important as well. So this is one of those times where it's like, well, what is it like to walk in someone else's shoes, and to think about what is it like to be a nurse and to see those kinds of things, or to see what you've seen, and to look at somebody who seems stubborn in your eyes, and to be so part of your own group of, oh, I believe in this, and I've seen this, and so this is why I believe this. I'm part of this group, and so I'm going to make an enemy out of anybody who's different and take them down.
I think he's a Pharisee.
Because they're wrong, That's kind of, like, people don't say it, but that's kind of the underlying motive there. But it's very unconscious. It's a very subconscious thing that sometimes we're not aware of. And so that's why Socrates is saying it's very important to be aware of ourselves, to really seek knowledge from within, and to really think about, well, what is it like to be like that? What is it like to be on the other side? What is it like to think that way, and to have that upbringing, and to have those parents, and to see what you've seen, and to walk in your shoes as a nurse, or to walk in your shoes as, whatever you've experienced on the other side. So just like open-mindedness, thinking, and not making an enemy out of somebody who is different, but to think and to try to take somebody in who is different. It's very hard to do, but it's very important, I think, especially in these times. There's a lot to talk about here. Lots of subjects, lots of things to kind of chew over and to examine within ourselves. Even myself, I'm always seeking for deeper knowledge of myself, and for still, even now, even after many years of thinking of these ideas of what does it mean to be evil and good, it's very complicated. These are very complex subjects and topics, and nobody knows how they would react in a situation unless they were in that situation. So it's very easy to point the finger and say, I wouldn't do that, but then once you're in it, it's like, I did the other thing that I thought I wouldn't do.
The virtue of a human character is not just a motif in mythic tales about gods and devils. It is a practical reality of daily life that is exercised every time we work and relate to one another. With that being said, let's delve into Socrates' remedy to all of this, which is knowledge to virtue. Human character is the foundation of competence in all cooperative efforts. For Socrates, knowledge is the foundation of a skillful and healthy human character. The key to the relationship between knowledge and character is the ability of a person to submit their willful living to the influence of knowledge. The subordination of the will to knowledge is the primary outcome Socrates sought in the examined life. When the human will is able to allow itself to be influenced by knowledge, this is a manifestation of a basic virtue of human character that we all need to live well. A broken character is no different from a broken leg in terms of giving rise to a reduce in functionality. When your leg is harmed, you limp. The same goes for when your broken character diminishes the cooperative skill of society. The cooperative group, family, work, etc. limps to that extent. Such limping of society will eventually tread upon the well-being of those who cause the limping. This is always true to the extent that we survive and thrive better as a group than as an isolationist hermit. When we are alone, we must be disciplined in learning, persistent in developing our skills, and faithful to improving our character in order to work towards a life worth living. Even for the hermit, Mother Nature teaches her that human character will bless her or kill her. The lazy and ignorant do not survive alone in the wild. Heraclitus said that character is destiny. The persistent effort to develop skillful and upright character is the most important willful act that any individual can perform to make their destiny something worth living. If we can all agree that harm to character is real harm, then nobody wants bad character. Therefore, if what we see as evil is the result of ignorance, then the remedy is the cessation of ignorance, which is the pursuit of knowledge. Knowledge gives us the ability to transcend the boundaries of our natural morality and to see the bigger picture for what it is. And this belief was the theme that is alluded to throughout much of Socrates' philosophy, which makes lots of sense given the time of history in which he was alive to witness. During Socrates' life, Athens was going through a dramatic transition from hegemony in the classic world to its decline after a humiliating defeat by Sparta in the Peloponnesian War. Athenians entered a period of instability and doubt about their identity and place in the world. As a result of this, they clung to past glories, notions of wealth, and a fixation with physical beauty. Socrates attacked these values with his insistent emphasis on the greater importance of the mind. While many Athenians admired Socrates' challenge to Greek conventional wisdom and the humorous way he went about it, an equal number grew angry and felt that he threatened their way of life and uncertain future. As a result of this, the man was brought into court to face supposed crimes of corrupting the youth and was forced to defend himself from such erroneous accusations. The jury was not swayed by Socrates' defense and convicted him by a vote of 280 to 221. Possibly the defiant tone of his defense contributed to the verdict, and he made things worse during the deliberation over his punishment. Athenian law allowed a convicted citizen to propose an alternative punishment to the one called for by the prosecution, and the jury would decide. Instead of proposing to be exiled, Socrates suggested that he should be honored by the city for his contribution to their enlightenment and be paid for his services. The jury was not amused and sentenced him to death by drinking a mixture of poisoned hemlock. Before Socrates' execution, friends offered to bribe the guards and rescue him so that he could flee into exile. But he declined, stating that he wasn't afraid of death and felt that he was no better off in exile, and said that he was still a loyal citizen of Athens, willing to abide by its laws, even the ones that condemned him to death. Plato described Socrates' execution in his Phaedo dialogue. Quote, Socrates drank the hemlock mixture without hesitation. Numbness slowly crept into his body until it reached his heart. Shortly before his final breath, Socrates described his death as a release of the soul from the body. Although Socrates died in the physical sense, His soul lived on through his teachings and went on to nurture the minds of many generations to come.
So I learned about Socrates and Plato and a little bit about philosophy in high school, like in my later years of high school. I had a teacher who liked to talk about some of these deeper topics and aspects and life, and I'm very grateful for that because that's where I learned about the allegory of the cave that's in my book. But I did not know that background about Socrates because I never really dove into his life or learning about the history of him. So that's very interesting for me to kind of learn a little bit more about his life and what happened at the end of his life. It's very interesting. And as I was watching, I remembered from one of my videos, my last videos, it was me reacting to Joe Rogan and Sadhguru, and it was about criminals and prisoners. And in that video, I got quite a few comments, and there were certain people who were like, oh, when you got teary-eyed, like I got teary-eyed, and I felt compassion for people who were in prison as well, and people on this side. And then there's the other side where there's people like, oh, I have zero compassion for people who are tyrants. Like, I'm curious about what this guy thinks about that kind of evil, because I have no let me see what the exact thing was. Person said, I wonder what this guy would say about tyrants. This is definitely one area where I have to disagree with this guy. In my opinion, anyone who abuses their power is evil. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this and kind of give my own ideas and opinions after this video that we just watched about Socrates and his ideas about evil. I think there are many people in the world who have that same stance, who are like, oh, those are evil people, they need to be put in jail and be put away. And I think it's very easy to kind of write off somebody like my character. So like my character that I'll be playing as an evil person. So my character, I'm gonna tell you like very vaguely because I don't want to give away the story, but the ideas that I have, because it's also not set in stone, but the ideas I have is that the hero does something and it causes her life to be affected by his own actions, and by his actions affecting her, it leads to her becoming a villain, becoming what people would call evil, through this pain of the action that was inflicted by this hero. And so it has consequences what he has done, and so she goes after him. So this idea, it's kind of diving into the topic of the hero, his actions have a consequence that lead to pain in somebody else's life, that lead to pain being inflicted on his own life. So you see the consequences stack upon each other, and we see kind of this idea of evil and what it means to have revenge or to get back at somebody, and how that can just continue this cycle of more and more and more pain. I was supposed to read this in high school, and then I just read the Spark Notes and I didn't ever actually read the book. So I decided that since I'm going to be writing a book about evil people, I wanted to revisit this book. So I went and picked this book up. But this is Grendel by Gardner. And it kind of explores a villain and explores what it's like to look through the eyes of someone who is in so much pain. So in this book, it first begins with Grendel kind of talking, and you get to see inside of the mind of Grendel. And it's very interesting because you get to see what it's like to be a monster that nobody wants to interact with and is isolated. And so he's talking about this deer. The doe in the clearing goes stiff at sight of my horridness, then remembers her legs and is gone. It makes me cross. Blind prejudice! I bawl at the splintered sunlight where half a second ago she stood. I wring my fingers, put on a long face. Ah, the unfairness of everything, I say, and shake my head. It is a matter of fact that I have never killed a deer in all my life, and never will. Cows have more meat, and locked up in pens are easier to catch. It is true, perhaps, that I feel some trifling dislike of deer, but no more dislike than I feel for other natural things, discounting men. I am not in a mood just yet to talk of men. So it goes with me day by day and age by age, I tell myself, locked in the deadly progression of moon and stars. I shake my head, muttering darkly on shaded paths, holding conversation with the only friend and comfort this world affords, my shadow. We see the perspective of an evil person, or a very misunderstood, a monster that nobody wants to interact with, and people just kind of write you off like the Joker and say, oh, you're just a crazy, person. But you don't see the other side. You don't see what leads up to that. When I got that comment about tyrants and those people are evil and what they've done is wrong and they shouldn't, they don't deserve to live, basically. That's kind of why I really wanted to make a villain that I was going to be playing for this, specific exercise, because I think it's very easy for the hero to actually turn into the villain by deciding to take it upon their own hands, to look at, oh, I know better. I know what it means to be a good person, and so I will take out that person. And if you think about it, that's actually becoming what the villain is it not? It's a very interesting topic to kind of discover and uncover of when is it right to do that, when is it wrong to do that, and also like to think about, if I was in those shoes, if I could walk in somebody's shoes and be born to the parents that they were born into and grow up in that city they were born in and experience that bullying from that high school, or to feel like that outcast, or to feel like nobody loved me. And it's very easy to say, oh, but if I was in that, I wouldn't be that way because I'm a good person. But when you're actually in that experience, or when you're actually, literally walking in those shoes, nobody knows what they would do unless they were that person looking through those eyes, with those experiences, with that view of the world. These are such interesting questions. There are no right or wrong answers, and there are no way to definitively say yes or no, that's right or wrong. There's a lot to talk about here. Lots of subjects, lots of things to kind of chew over and to examine within ourselves. Even myself, I'm always seeking for deeper knowledge of myself, and for still, even now, even after many years of thinking of these ideas of what does it mean to be evil and good, it's very complicated. These are very complex subjects and topics, and nobody knows how they would react in a situation unless they were in that situation. So it's very easy to point the finger and say, I wouldn't do that, but then once you're in it, it's like, I did the other thing that I thought I wouldn't do. I hope this makes you guys think a little bit deeper about life, about experiences, about things, and about things that are going on, because it's important to think of these things now. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope it affects your life in a positive way, because that's what it's for. And thank you so much for joining me from whatever part of the world you're joining in from. And I'm so grateful for you clicking on my videos. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of this world. And I would like to say, if you're feeling alone, if you're feeling not important in the world because of wherever you are, or if you're feeling like, I'm getting emotional because I know what that feels like, and that's kind of why I decided I wanted to be a teacher, was because the teachers that I encountered and the communities I encountered were so vital for me, or I may have ended up like the monsters that you read about in the books. Or I might not even be here, probably, if it weren't for those groups and those communities that took me in. And yeah, so that's what I wanted to make, a community for other people who felt like that. And so I hope you guys enjoy these videos or feel like you're not alone in the world, because you're not alone, and there are people out there who are good people and decide to try to do good in the world in their own way. So what the heck. All right, that's enough. All right, so that's all. Thank you so much for joining me, and if you have anything you'd like for me to react to next, you can leave that down in the comments below. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I love to hear it, and it makes me excited to go on making more videos. So please interact down below. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being a part of this, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys.